This? Okay. So my name is Gary Roydman. Hi, everybody. That's my mom over there. Everybody say hi to CJ. The rest of my family are all here in Mill Valley because we live in Mill Valley, but none of them came tonight. So boo to them. So I want to just tell you real quick about, can you hear me okay? Is this thing working? I'm having a little trouble with that. We'll figure it out. But a couple things you need to know. So what we did is about a year ago, a little over a year ago, we started this fly. So who's heard of the moth before? Anybody? Okay, a lot of people have. Great. So this is a complete rip-off of the moth, okay? It's called the fly. It stands for Factual Life Yarns. And it's our Mill Valley version. And what we wanted to do was to form a community here in Mill Valley of storytellers, because it really is great to hear stories. Everybody has wonderful stories in them. And what we do is I have everybody tell me their story beforehand. We work on it, we practice a little bit, we give each other some notes, we figure out how we're going to make it the best story ever so that everybody gets a great experience. And everybody who comes up here is super brave, because it's hard to tell a story. So we have to give them all a big round of applause once they're up here. Even you in the back, way in the back in the lounge chairs. Okay, yeah. Excellent. So let's see. What we do is these are truth stories, personal stories that are we tell without notes, and these are things that happen to us. And the theme tonight is bending the rules. And I asked each of you to fill out a piece of paper about bending the rules, and I just thought it was funny because there were some themes that came up. A lot of sneaking into places and doing things like that. But I want to start with one I thought was very funny. It's a combination here. Where did I put it? Okay, I just thought this was funny because here we go. We have one person who says, as a Jew, as a Jew, I broke the rules and watched the Yankees and Dodgers on Rosh Hashanah. But then we had the other side of the coin, which was when I was a child, I had to go to confession as a Catholic. I couldn't think of any sins to confess, so I made them up. Basically, I lied to the priest that I had lied. So, here's a place where we all come together. The Jews, the Catholics, everybody here. Everybody's welcome. Yes. Okay. Come on, and everybody say hello to the newcomers. Talk to Jules over there. Let's see, couple more things you think about. In the side over there, there's t-shirts like this. If you think these are so fantastic that you need to own one, they're right over there. I can sell it to you. This is not up there very well, but next month, we're still trying to figure out exactly where we're going to do it because this place won't be open. But we will do it somewhere close by, and the theme will be yikes. Yikes. So I'm sure you can all think of things that were good, bad, or different at yikes. You can't really see it, but that side's our Facebook page QR code, and that side's the website. We just created a new, and it's the real we, it's me. I created a website. Okay. Sorry. I have a company called GTR Consulting, and people are like, how many people GTR? I'm like, well, let's see, including me, there's one. So that's it. Okay, so I guess I'm going to start the night by telling you my story. You can give me a big round of applause while I get this ready. Here we go. Let's see. All right, let's see if I can get this up here. I'm just going to do it here. Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Okay, so the restaurant was called Brandy's American Cafe. Bistro. Brandy's American Bistro. And it was in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Go Blue. And I was a waiter. And I don't think I was the best waiter out there, but I used my job very efficiently. So it was 1987. I had just finished up my sophomore year in college, and we decided to stay, me and all my roommates decided to stay for the summer, to have a summer in Ann Arbor, hang out, have a good time. And we all wanted to take some classes just to get some of our requirements out of the way. And I was going to take Spanish. So I had some extra time because, when you're there for the summer and you're taking one class, you don't really do a lot. So I took a job at Brandy's. And I served Brandy's very well, and Brandy's served, I served Brandy's well, and I served others very well too. Brandy served me well, and I served others well. So let me tell you how Brandy served me well to start. So as I mentioned, some of you who've been here before, you know when I talk about math, it's not my skill. Well, neither is language. I'm not someone who's very good at languages. In fact, my 7th grade French teacher, Monsieur Penchant, went up to my mother and said, he is not going to succeed in language. True story? True story. So, yeah, he's not going to succeed, and he was right. So what I decided that summer is that I was going to take this class pass-fail. Because pass-fail, all I had to do is get a C-, right? I could do a C-, right? But I was still a little bit worried, because again, I'm not great at languages, and I thought, well, how am I going to do this? And so I didn't know what I was going to do, and yet I went to Brandy's, and there was my Spanish teacher. And she was a very frequent customer of Brandy's. So I figured, all right. So every time I handed an assignment in late, I'd give her a free drink. And every time one time when I took a translation from the library that I really shouldn't have taken, and I translated a document that she asked me to translate, I gave her a free drink and a free dessert. And then when it came to my final exam, I figured I'll just give her free drinks all night. And I did. And guess what? I got a C-. Yeah, thank you, Brandy's. Yeah, it did very well for me. But it was not just how I served, it wasn't just how Brandy served me, but it's also how I served others that kind of got me and Brandy's in a little bit of trouble. Because when you're in a college town, or not, when you're in a college town, most of your customers are underage people, right? And I knew that, and they knew that. And the deal was, I would go up to them and say, I'm not going to card you. And they knew that I knew that they weren't of age. And the deal was, it's an unwritten rule, if I serve you, you tip me. That's how it worked. And I wasn't above enforcing this rule. For example, I had one party that I remember this. They were sitting, we had an outdoor section. They were sitting outside, and it was like 14 people, and I'm serving them all night, and they're all very excited. And I knew one of the people in the group, so I knew they were all underage, because she was in a class of mine. And they were all underage, but it's no problem. And then it started to rain. So just when their entrees came in, we brought all their entrees inside and set them up inside. They basically closed the restaurant. We had, and at the time, I remember it was in the 80s, and I remember the bill was something like $200, wow, for 14 people or whatever, but it was a lot of money. And I remember them, at the end of the night, I gave them the check, and they handed it to me, and I looked at it, and it was $202. So I gave them $200 to the office or to the management, and I came back, and I gave the $2, and I put it back out down the table, and I walked away. And the girl who knew me came up to me with the check, and she goes, "Oh, here you go." And I looked down, and there was $3 on it. And I wasn't having that. So I went back to the table, and I sat down, and I put the thing down, and I said, "Hey, how was my service tonight?" And they're like, "Oh my God, you were fantastic. Thank you so much. You made our evening." I said, "Well, if this is how you show your appreciation, I'm just gonna let you keep this tip." And I walked away.
Nice.
Yeah, right? Stand up for myself. And I ended up getting one of the biggest tips I ever got working at Brandy's that night, because they all threw money in. The next day, I got pulled aside by the general manager, who had been called by this party because someone in that party was from Europe, and they didn't understand the rules, and I embarrassed them and ruined the night for them. And the good news was he yelled at me for a minute, but he kind of had a soft spot for me, so it was no big deal, and I made lots of money, so it was all good. It was a win-win, in my opinion. But there was this assistant manager, Chris, and she was a woman who was she had a bit of an attitude, and she wanted to make herself known in this company. She wanted to, she had a bit of a chip on her shoulder, and she decided that she was going to keep an eye on me because I had done this thing, and she wanted to make an example of me. So one day, we were outside, I was serving outside, and there was a big party, and it was Ken, the bartender's girlfriend, and her friends. Ken was 35. And so I didn't even think to card them because, Ken was 35. And the assistant manager, Chris, said, "You need to card those people." And I said, "Okay." And I walked out to the table, and I said, "Guys, I need to see your IDs." And they said, "Okay." And they all held up their IDs, and I'm like, "Looks good." And I walked back inside. I didn't even look. It looks good. And I went inside, and the assistant manager said, "Did you card them?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Did you card them?" I said, yeah, you looked through the window. You could see me. I carded them. She said, you didn't card them. And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, I know she's 19. The bartender's girlfriend was 19. He was 35. Anyway, that's a different story. But so she was fuming. She was so mad. And at the end of the shift, she came up to me and she said, you know what? You're going to have to hand in your apron. And I thought, okay, whatever. Because this is a person no one had any respect for her. No one really liked her. She wasn't well liked there. And so I just left. And the next day I came in for my shift. And everybody kind of gave me funny looks. And this general manager came over, put his arm around me, and said, hey, you know what? I'm sorry. We're going to have to talk over here. And we talked, and he said, look, I don't agree with her decision, but I've got to stand up for her. She's the assistant manager, and I want to, we set a bad example if I let you stay. So I'm sorry, but we're going to have to let you go. A month and a half later, Brandy's closed his doors forever. Now, I'm not saying it was directly because of me. But I'm not saying that. Because really, when you think about how you do well in a restaurant, it's like a dash of bribery and a splash of alcohol and a lot of bending the rules. I want to just read a couple more of these because, again, they're all on a theme. And it's very funny. Let's see. Okay, so then we had a lot of IDs, like driver's license, things like that. I used to be very good at modifying New York State driver's license to get me and my friends underage into the bar. So that was one. And then I like this one. Okay, this is for you in the back. She wrote me this wasn't a sentence, but I'm gonna she's bending the rules right off the bat. Okay, I'm 16. Armed only with a glue stick and scotch tape and the blind confidence of a teenager that could MacGyver my own fake ID. It was so janky that I practically winked every time. You look at it, every time you looked at it. Of course I'm 22. The best part, my parents got in on the game of making it with me at a strange arts and crafts family night at the Notary House? Notary House, okay. That's her story. All right, excellent. So, we're going to have AT is going to come up here and we're going to have her tell her story. This is, AT was an audience member just like you. And then she decided she was going to tell a story too. So let's give a big hand for AT. Okay. All right. Take it away, AT.
Have you ever wanted to be a child again? Just for a day, not like in an insane asylum where you're that way forever. But now that we know what not being a kid is like, to be a kid again, what a joy. Well, I had this opportunity not long ago, and I really got into it. I got ready to have some time in the child landscape, absolutely. So, early in the morning, I was on my way to the entryway into the children's kingdom. I hadn't been there for decades. So imagine my surprise when instead of all of these life-size fluffy animals welcoming me, no, there are uniformed officers. My partner and I walked up to a folding table, and I was face off with two uniformed officers in Barney Fife hats and Mickey Mouse badges. Well, before you think I'm a scofflaw, they were badges of stamped metal in the shape of Mickey Mouse's head, because this was Disneyland. Now, it's a little hard to take seriously, somebody looking that way, but I'm not a scofflaw. So when the man of the two officers asked if he could see my purse, noticing the little teensy purse hanging from a thong off my wrist, I said, "Certainly, officer." So I took the purse off and I put it on the table between us and I unzipped it and I held it open for him to see my cell phone, my wallet, and my comb, which was all that could fit in that wallet. So he leaned over to give it a good inspection. Now, I gotta tell you, I am not a Disneyland kind of gal. I have been told to grow up so much in my life. I've tried so hard that I don't go to places that encourage me to behave like a child. But when my partner said that after his company merged with Disney, that made him a Disney cast member. And what that meant is he gets free into all the parks. So he said, "How would you like to go to Disneyland?" Well, I figured it had been quite a while since I'd been grossly a fool, kept it under wraps, so I thought, sure, I'll give it a test. Well, we took the train from Emeryville to Anaheim, and on that day-long trip, I did the best I could to become a little kid, because I figured, what's Disneyland as an adult? I gotta get back into kid mode. So all the way there, I was just working on that train, just getting younger and younger in my mind, and I knew I'd sort of arrived because when I got off in Anaheim, I got off at Choo Choo. Well, we spent the night there in one of the hotels that's next to the park. And in the morning, it was in April, school wasn't out yet, it was right at 9 o'clock when the doors opened, so I was ready, and as I walked up, I saw these two officers. But it wasn't until that officer was looking in my purse that I really knew my 10-year-old had taken over my life. Because in a stage whisper, she leaned toward his head, leaning over my purse, and she said, "You can keep the 20 if you overlook the Beretta." Well, he just glanced up at me and kept looking. But his partner's eyes got saucer huge. And my partner's eyes got saucer huge. And then the gentleman said, "Well, you can zip your purse closed. Thank you, ma'am." And he stood up, but he realized that that hadn't really cut the tension of the moment. So he looked at his partner, and he looked at my partner, and he realized what he'd forgotten. And he stood up, put his shoulders back, and he said, "Welcome to Disneyland, ma'am." And his partner wound back and she just plunged her elbow into his ribs and said, "You don't know what a Beretta is, do you?" And he looked at her quizzically and she said, "A Beretta is a handgun." And he said to her so seriously, "But there wasn't a gun in there." And she put her hand on his shoulder and patted it and said, "I figured that." And then she looked at me and she said, "And you?" And I thought, oh darn, not gonna let us in after coming all this way. Didn't you tell that was just playing? And then her gesture turned from a pointing finger to a thumbs up. And she said, "I got your back."
Thank you. A.T. Lynn! A.T. made a little drawing. I'm not sure how it's going to come up. Yeah, here, let me hit the look so you can see it. Can you explain this drawing for us? So it's funny, your story reminds me of when there was another, I think it's all the Chris's in my life that create problems for me. I was going to, is your name Chris? Yeah, no. Okay. Because I remember I was flying, I used to travel a lot for work. I do market research along with some people here tonight. And we were in some small rinky-dink town and we had to go in the airport and I was with this associate named Chris and we both were getting on the plane and I said, wow, because we were going on a very small plane, and this was back in the day pre-TSA, but I was like, wow, like there's no security or anything. And she goes, yeah, I could have a bomb, like as that loud, all the people around us, and I'm like, oh my God. Anyway, we were fine. Okay, let me read a couple more of these. Okay, I'm just gonna do this one just because it's so lame, Janet. This is bending the rules. Is I let my dog off leash at Chrissy Field. All right, it's Lisa's turn. It's Lisa's turn. Here's Lisa.
So I'm one of those rare people, well, I think I'm rare, who actually wants to serve on a jury. Anybody else? Yeah? Okay, all right, cool. So, I also believe, though, that we should have professional juries in this country for a lot of reasons, but I still, until that happens, I really, really want to. And in all my decades of being eligible to serve on a jury, I've only been called into the courtroom twice. And I don't know if that's a good number, a high number or a low number, but for me, I'm like, I've done it 2 times. The first time was back in 2000, and I was so excited. It was a juicy one. It was a murder trial in Marin. Oh, right! I was out of my skin, and I know you're not supposed to tell anybody anything about any of it, but I had to tell my boss, because I'm like, even the jury selection in a murder trial is going to take a while, so I'm not going to be in the office for a bit. And she's like, oh, Lisa, I think you might get chosen. They really like HR people on juries because we're all about policy and procedure. And I was like, oh, good. Well, I also happened to be pregnant with my youngest at that time, and like on day 2 of the voir dire, I had a prenatal appointment at the end of the day, and I went excitedly into my doctor's office. I'm like, I'm in a pool to be on a murder trial. He's like, Lisa, you can't serve on a murder trial. You're pregnant. You're going to get blood clots. You can't, you have to move around when you're pregnant, and they're not going to let you do that in the courtroom. So you need to go tomorrow and tell the judge you need to be excused. So my hopes were dashed. Okay, fast forward to June of 2022. Not a long time, right? I'm in the holding room, and this is important for a little bit later. And I noticed there were about 50 of us in there, mostly women, mostly my age-ish or older, significantly older. And because we're in Marin, mostly white. The other thing to note for a little bit later is they didn't have us watch that instructional video that I thought was required viewing for jury service. Like any other time, I've only been like 5 other times, but you had to watch that video. They didn't have us watch it. Okay, they get us all into the gallery in the courtroom. The judge comes out, and he tells us this is going to be a criminal trial. So of course I'm excited. And he says, and that requires a unanimous decision. I was like, ooh, the pressure's already on. Like, we all have to come up, the jury has to think together. And then he tells us that this is a trial of a non-English speaking man who's facing 2 charges of driving under the influence, even though he wasn't ever witnessed driving the car. The car was in fact broken down on the side of 101, and he was found outside of the car by the arresting officers who didn't speak Spanish. So already, these details are starting to feel weird to me. But I really want to serve on a jury. And then he says, and we're going to hear about a designated driver, not from the designated driver, about him. And something about a lie with details with the designated driver's contact information that the arresting officers will let us know about. I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel right. But okay. Random selection, fill the 20 seats in the box. Juror number 7, Lisa Morrill. I'm like, oh, that's me. But I don't feel good about this, but okay. So go through, start asking questions. The general, have you have experience with alcohol, drinking and driving, law enforcement, courthouses, and we're all raising our hands here and there and everywhere. It was the people's voir dire that day, starts in on that, the prosecution starts in, asking questions. We have somebody there who has a back injury from being hit by a drunk driver, and someone who was victim shamed by law enforcement, someone who has a brother-in-law that's a cop. Nobody's being cut. I'm like, this is really fascinating. I still want to do this, but this doesn't feel right. And the prosecution starts in on circumstantial evidence, because we're going to hear a lot about that. And one of the jurors is like, your definition doesn't work for me. So they start bantering, and she's in a corner trying to get out of it. And then another juror is like, well, yeah, I'm going to put my 2 kids, they're in trouble, they're each going to go in their own room, and I'm going to get their story separately, and then I'll get their story together, and then I'll make a decision. I'm like, that was scripted. It was just so weird. The whole thing just felt so weird. I'm like, is this what this is really like? What was that murder trial like in 2000? I can't even imagine. So the judge is like, you guys aren't the official jury. you're supposed to figure out if you're objective. That's all you're supposed to do right now. Just figure out if you can remain objective. But here are the jury rules. And I'm like, maybe if you had shown us the video, we wouldn't be here. But okay. So it's going on. I'm churning in my belly. We're creeping toward the noon dismissal because we have an early dismissal both days. And I raise my hand. My arm goes up, like uncontrollably. And I said, you know what, the longer I sit here, the more I question my ability to remain objective in this situation, especially with the media and ACAB, because it was 2022, and that was what was on the TV. And then we got dismissed, and I'm walking down the hallway to my truck, and I'm like, I just dropped that acronym in a courtroom. Bet you they're gonna want to talk to me tomorrow. So I go home and I'm like churning in my gut because it doesn't feel well. And I don't want to be there, but I didn't want to be dismissed, but I didn't want to be there. And so I prepare this whole courtroom monologue. You know, like I watch courtroom TV too. So I'm like, I'm gonna have my chance to stand up and say my piece. And I rehearse it. And I'm like, I've got this thing in my head that I want to say, and I hope I get the chance. And day 2 starts, it's the defense's voir dire, and they're asking a few people questions, and she goes in about dishonesty. Like, today we're going to talk about dishonesty, and how can you remain objective in the face of dishonesty? Because it's something about the designated driver and the arresting cops and the contact details, and like, none of this makes sense. Yesterday was circumstantial evidence, today's dishonesty. I'm still not objective. The guy who was arguing with prosecution the day before raises his hand and says, well, how do we know it's a lie? And the judge, he was not having it anymore. He goes, again, you guys, you are not the jury. This is not the trial. You just need to figure out if you can be objective. So the defense asks a few more questions, and then she says, so Miss Morrill, yesterday you shared with us you're wondering if you can be objective in all of this, especially with the media. Would you care to elaborate? And I was sitting there in my seat, I'm like, here we go, this is what I rehearsed last night. And so I stood up and I'm like, I shared that I understood we were all supposed to come to an infamous decision, but I couldn't in good conscience convict a non-black person of color of driving under the influence when there was no proof that he was actually ever driving the car. Never mind when the arresting officers didn't speak Spanish. I'm like, I have friends who are people of color. They have been marginalized and treated poorly by law enforcement. I just can't. And then I overshared, because that's what I do. I'm like, and this might sound really funny, I'm on a dating app right now, and anytime anybody comes across that's in law enforcement or in the military, I cancel them out, because I'm not interested in that. I just don't want any part of it. And then I catch eyes with the bailiff, the armed bailiff, and I'm like, it's too bad, because I know it has a place in society. But until there's a change in the system, I just can't. And then the cherry on top, I dramatically point to the guy, and I'm like, and I never separated my kids like he did. I don't know why, it was the adrenaline. The judge, he then puts his hand to his chest, and he says, I want to thank you for your honesty. I'm dismissing you right now. Be sure to hand in your badge on your way out. I was the first dismissal, so I say thank you. I gather my belongings. I start making my way out of the jury box, and I hear from the gallery a woman saying, that was really brave. And I was like, and I was shaking, and I hand my badge to the bailiff, and I start walking out the door. Before the doors closed, I could hear the judge launch into the snowball that I had pushed down the hill, because I know I was in a room full of people who felt the same way. But you're in that room and you feel the pressure to do what they want you to do. Never mind the rule bending that the arresting officers were doing. I wasn't part of it, so I don't know how the outcome was. But I just couldn't do it. I couldn't. And I walked down the hall the day before feeling really like, oh God, this feels horrible. I walked down the hall that day, I'm like, I stood taller than I've ever stood. I'm like, I am so proud of myself. That took a huge amount of bravery. I really hope I empowered other people to do the same thing, and that was it. So I still want to serve on a jury though. Thank you.
Lisa, one more time for Lisa. So I wanted to follow up for that. I wanted to find out if you got convicted, but Lisa doesn't.
Yeah, I tried searching and then I found their names of the people and I gotta look them up. But then the 2000 murder trial actually got turned over. He was convicted of murder in 2003 and that guy got overturned in 2008 and he was released. So like, that would have been a fascinating trial to be honest.
Nice. I just want to read a couple more of these. Okay, I bent the rules by driving out to California with no job, no money, no car at about 22. We took a Wilson driveway car, drive-away car, and I had 7 days to get here. I'm still here. Who's that? There we go. Welcome. And then also college. One day after college graduation in Ohio, I can't read this. I moved to Playa del Rey, turned down various job offers at IBM to take a waitress job at the Good Earth in Western California. Best decision ever. Nice. All right. We have our last story before the break, and that's Christine. Everybody give a big hand for Christine. Yeah. Take it away. You can move it, you can take it out. All right.
Good evening, everybody. Some families play catch. Some families play croquet. My family plays chess. Yeah. We play chess. My father was an avid chess player, and he needed someone to play the game with. He had 6 kids, built-in players. So all of us are avid chess players. And it's not unusual to be in my mother's home and have 3 chess boards on the floor running the length of the living room, and we're all playing chess. We're crazy people. And I learned chess when I was about 8 years old. And my brothers would play chess with me. They were older than I, and they were better chessmen. And they would play with me. And the wonderful thing about starting chess when you're a kid is you have no ego. Because when you start playing chess, you lose, and it can be very discouraging. And my brothers would bend the rules. By playing a game with me, I would start to lose, and they would say, "Are you ready to turn the tables? Are you ready to change sides?" And they would turn the table around and give me their winning men, and they take over the losing men. And I would see their strategy, and invariably after a couple of moves, I'd start losing again. I would be demolished. And they'd say, "You ready to turn the tables again?" "Yeah, I'm ready to turn the tables again." So round and round we went, and that extended the game of chess. But it also encouraged me to see their strategy on what they were doing to win the game. And as a kid, I began to learn someone else's perspective. Wow. And that's helped me today with my husband, that there's actually someone else out there with another idea. So chess has been great, and as I was telling Gary, one of the top days in my life with chess was when I beat my dad. Wow, I won that game. I told Gary, I said that was winning like the Nobel Prize. That was like a hallelujah moment. And my brothers will tell you that I'm probably the best female chess player they know. And then they cap it by saying I'm the only female chess player they know. So thanks a lot, brothers. My brothers got older, turned into men, they go into university or their jobs, and my father gave each one of them their own chess set. My brother Sid, he took my father's chess set. My brother Michael, he has the beautiful crystal, hand-carved crystal and onyx chess set, beautiful. Andy, he got the one from Copenhagen, a beautiful European style chess set. Dennis, he gets the Mexican chess set, what we call the Mexican beautiful carved chess set. So now I'm 14 years old and a real brat. And I said, "Well, where's my chess set?" I'm saying, right? So Dad starts telling me about how to find a good chess set. First thing you need to know about chessmen is you need to weigh them, make sure that they're weighted at the bottom. Not with some magnet stuck up the bottom, but a really nice, well-weighted one piece of wood chess set piece. And then you have to kind of turn it over to make sure that it's not glued, the top, because they usually make the bottoms and then they stick the tops on. Well, no, that's not a good chess set. So you want it weighted, you want it wood, and you want no glue. Great, okay. So now I'm on a chess hunt, I smell a chessboard, So we get to San Francisco, which we would do from Reno. That's the other thing we like in my family is opera. So every opera season, we would travel from Reno to San Francisco for the opera season. We stay at the Clift Hotel on Geary. We walk down, we go around Union Square. Mom goes to I. Magnan's, I go to FAO Schwartz. And my father went to Dunhill's. Gary asked me, what's Dunhill's? Dunhill's was the last bastion of masculinity, okay? That's where my dad got his cigars. That's where you find the humidors. That's where you find the pipes from all over the world and the Italian Colibri lighters. Remember those when you smoke marijuana? And so but they had chess sets. They had chess sets. They had the gold and silver ones, they had the stone ones, and they had the wood ones. And I saw my chess set. I found my chess set. Oh, and it's beautiful, and it's in rosewood and olive wood, gleaming, and it has that beautiful cedar smell that wood has. And I picked it up. Oh, it's well weighted. And I looked underneath, and there's no glue. and the amazing thing was, whoever created this chess set put little beads in the horse's eyes, in the knight's eyes, are these two little beads. So it looks like the horse is looking at you. Oh, I like that. So I run from Post Street through Union Square up to the Clift Hotel, get in the elevator, get to our rooms, and they're packing. They're leaving. Dad says, nope, we don't have any more time. We're not going to have a chance to look at your chess set with the horses with eyes. And we got to get back to Reno before nightfall. It's a 5-hour drive. But I could see he was vacillating. Should we look at the chess set? But we had to go. I gave it up. Christmas comes around. And I am sitting as the packages are being distributed. And I notice on the Christmas tree a horse with eyes. It's the White Knight. And my father, when he got home, he called long distance, which was, remember in olden days when you had to know daytime, nighttime, and you had the rotor dial phone, remember we didn't have AT&T or Verizon in those days. So he calls during the morning, and he calls Dunhill and says, my daughter saw a chess set with the horses with eyes. And the people said, oh yes, Mr. Rawlinson, we have that chess set. It's quite a lovely set. And he broke his own rules, he bent his own rules, and he bought something sight unseen. And I don't know what was more joyous to me was that I got the chess set or that he trusted his 14-year-old daughter that I would have that chess set. And with that chess set came this Christmas card, little tiny card. And the card reads, Christine, my darling, may I always be your white knight. Not finished yet now. that ain't the end, because here's the deal. Is that was the last Christmas I had with my father. That was the last gift he gave me. A few months later, he died. And here's something he said to me that I feel I really want to share with you. It's so key. Is he would often say to me, and he said before he died, went into the hospital and died, he said, Christine, so long as you live, I will never die. And there is no way in the world you can know me and not know my dad. And I get a chance to share with you, he's alive to me right now, just as much as I can tell you. He will always be my white knight.
Christine, everybody. Christine. That's a beautiful story. I'm sure we all have that experience. I mean, I know that I do. When I'll say something to my kids, they'll do something stupid, and I'll say something, and I'm like, oh my God, that was my dad. Anyway, we're going to take a break now. So a couple things. We have drinks there. There's one bathroom, so get in line early. There's free popcorn, and then there's T-shirts if anybody wants some over there. All right, take a break. We'll take about 15, 20 minutes. Enjoy. Thank you, everybody. Turn the video recording on, too, yeah. I was going to have my daughter help today, but she was sick. Okay, next time. All right, John, take it away.
Okay, great. I've played a lot of music at a lot of open mics, but I never did this before.
And put the mic a little closer.
Hold a little closer, yeah. So, let me tell you a story. The title of my story is Me and Angel, the Palapa Builder, from Puerto Penasco, Mexico. That's the title of the story. I could tell you something that might make things easier. For most of my career, my business card said, John B. Dowd, the carpenter from Philadelphia. So that accounts for why I talk funny. And the other reason is I grew up in North Jersey, close to New York City. So that combination accent is what I operate with. So in 2006, I had a good friend who was down in Puerto Penasco, Mexico on the Sea of Cortez, remodeling this big villa for a rich guy from Phoenix, Arizona, who had a land lease or something. So you can't own land, but you can lease it for a long time. And he built this villa, but by this point, by 2006, it needed to be fixed up. So my buddy Chad was down there doing all the electrical work, and he was running the work, and he was the superintendent, so to speak. And he called me and said, they want me to come down and install windows, and maybe for a couple weeks, but I would have to go down to Phoenix and meet Scott, the owner of the property, because he was going to be paying me and wanted to know a few things. So I go down to Phoenix from here. I was now living in Marin County at that point. I meet this guy, Scott. I stayed at his house for a couple days. He did a background check on me, which I passed with flying colors. I should have done one on him. You'll find out. And got the story straight. I'm going to go down to Puerto Penasco, Mexico, in my work van loaded with tools that I had as a carpenter. And he gave me $20,000 in cash and had me stuff it in my Timberland high-top work boots that I lived in to take down there to put in the safe in the trailer on the property to pay the workers and the subcontractors and others on the job. So I did. So this is my first trip to Mexico, and I didn't know from nothing. And I drove through the Sonoran Desert for I don't know how long, 5 hours or 6 hours. I wouldn't recommend that today with $20,000 stuff. But I finally get there and I see my friend Chad, who I love like a brother, and he's the greatest guy I ever knew. And this beautiful villa in the middle of nowhere in this town, on this street, on the road, driveway about 700 feet long. And I set up shop and I get all my tools and table saws and everything out, and I start working on these windows. I was only supposed to be there for 2 weeks, but as it turned out, I was there for 6 months. Because the guy kept adding work and he wanted me to stay. So it was okay with me. He was paying me $1,500 a week, every week, wired that right into my bank account. That's okay by me. My friend Chad is running the work, 20 local workers and other subcontractors. But when he had to leave the job, I would be left in charge to handle the payroll and to direct the work. I have the skill and background for that. We're getting close to the end of the job, and there was a guy on the job building a structure called a palapa. They don't have palapas in New Jersey, and they don't have them in South Philly, and I didn't know what a palapa was. Maybe you guys do, but I now know. A palapa is a beautiful outdoor structure made out of the poles from palm trees with a beautiful thatched palm leaf roof. And the local guy from Puerto Penasco, Mexico, named Angel, was the palapa expert. And he was 6'9", and he weighed 400 pounds, and he carried those poles around like they were nothing. And he spoke fluent English, which was helpful for us because we didn't speak Spanish very well, and we became friends with him. And Chad had to leave for a week, and I was left in charge. And Angel was about to finish his job, and we owed him $7,000 in cash. So Chad left. Turned out to get to the weekend. It's Saturday now. I'm there all by myself in this giant villa because everyone else was gone. It's in the middle of nowhere, down a 700-foot-long driveway. Saturday, Angel's supposed to come, and I'm supposed to hand him $7,000 at 3 p.m. At 2 p.m., Scott calls me from Phoenix, lets out a racial Hispanic slur about Angel and tells me to stiff him, don't pay him, he tells me. So I contained myself. I was a grown, mature man. I didn't let on how that struck me. And I let him think that I was going to follow his instructions, you know? So we hung up the phone. And, you know, I knew, for example, my own morals and every other, you know, fiber in my being wouldn't allow me not to pay this guy. Secondly, if anybody who has any common sense, like I'm from New Jersey, as wonderful as Angel is, he and his men work with two tools, sledgehammers and machetes. That's all they work with. So in case you're dumb enough to try to rip them off, you'd be smart to at least pay attention to that. So he gets there, Angel, and he comes to the door, and I smile, and I take him out to the trailer, and I open the safe, and I hand him $7,000 in cash. And that guy Scott's lucky I didn't hand him 8, to tell you the truth. And he smiled, I made him a big glass of lemonade, and sent him on his way. Not long after, this guy Scott called me on the phone from Phoenix to see if I was willing to do his dirty work. You know, I'm a gentleman, I'm going to watch what I say here about what I said, but, you know, I made it clear to him that he better never send me on an operation like that or think that I would do something like that. I mean, I learned then the guy's a racist and a crook, you know? I still had work to finish that I had been paid for, so I wasn't going to leave immediately. But I'll tell you something about me that I haven't mentioned in this story. I happened to grow up in a really dysfunctional, abusive home life as a kid. Mental illness, alcoholism. Unfortunately, that's just the way it was. Growing up in life, I found myself having trouble with chemical dependency. I get sober, I get involved in 12-step recovery, therapy, Course in Miracles, great, you know, therapeutic, you know, for straightening out a nervous inner life kind of thing. So I did a lot of work on myself out of necessity. And that day, after I got done at Angel, we sent him on his way, I got a chance to reflect on, you know, for a long time, you know, I never knew how to assert myself or how to stand up for myself. And over the years, I had developed that. And I realized that where I used to have a wishbone, now I have a backbone, you know? And so that's a good feeling, ain't it?
John, everybody, that's John. Philly, New Jersey, huh? Forget about it. I'm from Boston, so it's okay. East Coast, it's all good. All right, so our next storyteller, let's see who we're going to do next. Oh, I know who it is. I know who it is. So one of the people that we have to thank for this, some people ask me how this all started. And that was, I had an idea of doing something similar to The Moth. And I was shopping in this wonderful store next door with my daughter. And I ran into Jules and I said, you know, I see you have a venue back there. What do you do back there? She goes, oh, we have concerts and events. I said, well, I was thinking about doing something like The Moth. She said, yes, do it. And that was it. We just started doing it. And it's because of her, we are here. We've been here for over a year and it's been so fantastic. So Jules is going to tell a story. Let's have a look at
Unless I hear about you doing it somewhere else next
Well, I can't. You said you can't do the 25th.
No, I said I'm in San Diego for the 25th, but you can still do it.
Oh, I can? All right, well, then I'm doing it here.
Somewhere else.
All right, we'll talk.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Hello.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
My
Mike.
goodness, I can't remember that. That's why I need an assistant.
You've got one, but it sounds better.
Yes, exactly. The whole audience is here to help me. Thank you, everybody.
So, I have a story for you. It's a little macabre, as they sometimes are. And as far as bending the rules, it's more bending the rules of social norm and socially acceptable things that happen or shouldn't happen but do happen and so forth. And this happened, it was middle of the pandemic, so it was a weird time anyway. And I met up with some friends, a friend of mine called Fiona and her 2 young boys who at the time were about maybe 6 and 2.5. And we were going to meet at Blackie's Pasture, which some of you may know in Tiburon here, and there's a nice walk that we do close to the water's edge, and there's a little play park for the little boys to play for a bit, and then we would walk down onto the beach and stuff. So we met up to do just that, and we're off walking, and the boys are clambering off down to the rocks, and there's some rock pools, and the 2-year-old's like going off in all directions, and I'm kind of watching the older boy, who's totally fine. He's a very mature old soul. And we're just tooling around in the tide pools, and there's, they're throwing rocks and things. And Fiona's chasing the 2-year-old, and the older boy, Louis, he's kind of wandering off. He's like, "Mom, I found something. Come look at this." And she's like, "Not right now. Now I'm caught up with the toddler." And he's like, "Mom, come on." And she's like, "Just bring it to me, whatever it is." And he's like, "I can't, Mom." And she's like, "Louis, whatever it is," because she's got her hands full. And he's like, and I was like, I'll come see what it is, Louis. Show me. So we go, and it's a dead dog. And it's a dead dog that's kind of floating in the shallows, and it's just going kind of back and forth, and it's this bloated dog that's just floating there. And I'm like, yeah, he can't really bring it to you. It's a dog. And he's like, "See, I told you so." And so I'm like, okay, it's a dog. But the dog has a collar around its neck. So the dog belongs to someone, or did. I'm a dog owner, and I'm like, if that were my dog, So I carefully take the collar off, and now Mom's here, and she's like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do with this? Don't touch it, leave it alone, boys, don't touch it, whatever." I, of course, am touching it and getting the collar off, and Maisie is the name of the little dog. It's this little girl called Maisie, and I call the number on the collar. And I'm like, "Hey, I'm so sorry. We found a dog that has your phone number on, and I'm just letting you know we're in Tiburon. Please call me back. I'm so sorry to let you know the dog has passed away, but dog's here," and so forth. And then didn't think much of it. Left the dog, carried on our walk, having a great time, so forth. Wasn't that odd finding a dog? Was that, but moved on our way. And didn't think much else of it. And then a couple of days later, I get a phone call from the woman, the owner of the dog. And she's like, "Oh my God, I'm so devastated. About a week ago, there was a huge storm, and I lived on a houseboat in Sausalito, and the houseboat completely got demolished, and I lost my dog in the storm at night, and it was devastating, and and I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Well, your dog is washed up and is on on the rocks over near Blackie's Pasture in Tiburon." And she was like, "Oh my God, thank you so much for calling me. I'm so happy to know what happened, even though I'm devastated he's died, of course." And before I could stop myself, I was like, "Would you like me to get the dog?" And sometimes the words are out my mouth before I've thought it through. And she's like, "Oh my God, would you do that? That'd be amazing." And I'm like, "Of course, I will do this. I'll go see if it's still there. We'll get you the dog, and then you can bury your dog." And she's like, "Well, I've got property up in Hillsburg, and wouldn't it be lovely to take her up there and bury him? Of course, I'll do whatever I can. I'm going to go get you your dog. Because I have nothing better to do than go get dead dogs off the beach. And I was like, and I have a dog. I had 2 dogs. And I was like, I don't want to know what happened to my dog if it had died, you know? And if someone offered to get it, I probably wouldn't let them. I'd be like, no, I'll go. Tell me where it is. And I was trying to share the location with her and everything, and she couldn't figure it out. She couldn't get it. So I was destined to go get the dog. Without knowing it would still be there or not, I had no idea. And of course, I have to enlist the help of my son, because during the pandemic, he'd been due to take his driver's test right before the pandemic, like literally the week of shutdown. So he didn't manage to get his test, so he had become my driver during the pandemic. Whenever we went anywhere, I was getting him more and more practice and making him drive. And he'd been nervous going over Golden Gate Bridge, so I was like, so she was no longer in Sausalito, now she's in the city, staying at a friend's. So now I had to take the dead dog into the city, not just Sausalito. So I enlist the help of my son, but I don't tell him the whole story because he's very begrudging at helping me do things. And if I told him that we were going to go to the beach, get a dead dog, put it in the car, go to the city, he'd be like, no way. He's used to, both my boys are used to my harebrained ideas and often get roped into it. So I was kind of like, we're just going to go swing by the beach and we'll run the dogs first at Blackie's pasture and then we'll head into the city. I have to run some errands. And he's like, okay, all right. So we go and like, what's with the box, Mum? You know, why? Oh, don't worry about that, you know. So we pull up and we park by the tennis courts there. There's a club or something out near by the Tiburon Walk or something, because that was kind of where I remembered it being. So we parked there, and now I'm like, well, you know, whilst we're here, I had kind of mentioned that I was picking up this woman's dog and so forth. He was like, okay. And I'm like, don't worry about that, yeah. So we go, and we, climb down to where the rocks are, and the dog is still there, like 2-3 days later. It's got a bit of a smell now. And there's turkey vultures. So there's turkey vultures hovering over it now. And I just keep reminding myself, if this were my dog, I wouldn't want him to be left there. I want him to be scooped up or something. So that's how I reconciled this. And of course I'm invested now. Like I've got to get this damn dog. So scoop up the dog, and my son is like, no way, Mom, and I'm like, just help me, like, Mom, and he's really resisting, but I'm doing it. So we scoop up the dog, wrap it in a towel, put it in, I had one of those freezer insulator bag things, I put it in that, and then I put it in the box, and then we got it in the car, and we round up my dogs, they're in the car, and they're like, weird. We can smell a dog, but not really a dog. What's going on? Not sure. So we're all loaded in the car and heading into the city. And there's a little bit of a smell, but I'm brushing it aside. And my son is like, "What, Mom? It's not dog." And I was like, "No, it's not." So we drive into. He drives into the city, and so there's a little diversion there that we do. So whenever I go anywhere, if I pass a thrift store, I kind of have to go in because that's my business, and we happen to go past Goodwill, and I'm like, just pull up right here. He's like, Mom, no. And I'm like, don't be silly, yes, just pull up, we're going to go, and I go into Goodwill, and I leave him in the car with the dogs, one dead dog, and of course, and he's like ringing me, Mom, come on, get the phone. So I do my Goodwill thing, I pick up a few bits and pieces, come out, get back in the car, and we're back in the car. And he's pissed. He's like, Mom, I never signed up for this. I didn't agree to any of this. I'm like, you're fine. And I keep reminding him, if this was our dog Dash, wouldn't you like someone to do this for us? And he's not really buying it. So we head over and we drive down to the woman's address, and who is beside herself with gratitude. Like beyond grateful, as she should be, because I did kind of go above and beyond. So we hand over the dog in the freezer bag and the box and all of that, and she's beyond grateful. And she takes her dog, and we leave, and it's all fine and we're all done. And then about a week or so later, she sends me a message, and it's a little note, and there's a little photo of her little Macy's gravestone that she'd made at her property up in Hillsburg. And the sweetest little note that was like, thank you so much. The dog meant the world to me. I'd had the dog for maybe 12, and he was an elderly dog. And it just meant the world to me that we were able to bury her on her property and that we were reunited. And I really appreciate what you did. And so that's the end of my story about the dog and how she was able to find her final resting place.
I just
There is a photo of said dog, Macy. I'd actually forgotten. I'd taken a photo of thing. Yeah.
give it up for Jewel, the dead dog. Okay, I'm just gonna leave it up there for a minute just so you can really. The funny thing is when Jules just says I called her on the phone, the first thing I thought was she'd say something like, well, I have good news and bad news. The good news is I found your dog. Anyway, but it was fun to meet, no? Anyway, all right, what time is it, everybody? What time is it?
9:05.
9:05, okay. I think we're ready for our last story tonight. we're gonna do that another time, but we're gonna have Dave come up and tell a story. Big hand for Dave, everybody. Big hand for Dave. This one.
You're so on it for the last
I know.
speaker.
There we go.
You got
All
this
right. Dave, everybody, Dave.
Hello, yes? It's so funny because I get so into the stories. The stories have been great. Thank you, everybody. And I'm like, Gary calls me up. I'm like, wait, what am I doing? Oh, yeah, that's right. All right.
It's up there.
See?
It helps.
Why did I put red? Okay. So, all right, we're gonna go a trip back in time here. We're gonna go back to 1998-ish. And for anyone who heard my story previously, this is the stage of my life where I have walked away from a perfectly acceptable career in biotech to pursue what I really wanted to do, which is drive race cars, which did work out. But right now, at this point in the storyline, that's not clear, and really this is in my starving artist stage. I was parking cars in San Francisco as a valet. So we're gonna step into the world, parking cars, working as a valet in downtown San Francisco in 1998. So the main restaurant was Boulevard, which is down at the very foot of Market Street, right? It's still there now. And the way, I'm gonna kind of paint generally how the operation worked, and then we'll get into the one particular day that was a little different than the rest. But the way, it was a pretty big operation, I'll be honest, because in the night times we were parking cars for Boulevard, which was on the corner, and also we had Harry Denton's. Oh, yeah. Yeah, down the street there. Oh. So both things. And, it was a pretty big operation. We had one guy, Joel. Joel was the Red Coat, which apparently has some history in ballet land going back 100 years, like the Red Coat. And he literally had a big red coat with brass buttons. And he was, he would greet people and give them the ticket. And pretty much all the rest of us, I think there would be 5 of us on a night, and we'd have radios, and we were basically just running cars. There was a garage down at the end of the block, across the street. And we had a swipe card thing, you hop in the car, you drive down, you swipe the card through the thing, the bar opens. We were allowed to use the first floor or 2 of the garage. Anyone else who was paying had to go up, And then as the evening went on, you're going back, you're running back to the garage, you're picking cards up, you're swiping the card to get out, drive them one-way street this way, one-way street that way, back this way, here's your car, off you go. Okay, so I mean, it was a pretty big operation. And like I said, we had radios throughout, big and busy. So that was the nighttime. Boulevard also asked us to do a daytime shift, Monday through Friday, for lunchtime, right? Okay, and in the big picture, it wasn't as busy, right? I mean, it's downtown financial district. People would walk down, primarily people would walk down from their office, meet someone for lunch, whatever, off you go. But, of course, people did drive in. So I'll leapfrog forward and say the lunch shift, was good money. It was really, really good money. And there's a couple of reasons for that involve potentially bending some rules. But I'll paint this picture for you because it was such a Marin deal. The guy that I work with that got me onto the lunch shift, because it took me a while before I earned the right to show up for the lunch shift. But the guy who worked the lunch shift, I mean, all the guys worked in Marin, or lived in Marin. The guy I worked with, his name was Sterling, which is welcome to Marin County. My name's Sterling. So, my name's Dave, right, by the way. So Sterling and I, we would get the Larkspur ferry at 10:15 a.m. We'd ride the ferry, and brings us to the ferry terminal. We'd walk across the street. We'd open up a door. We'd roll out our little cart, and we'd set up. And now it's people drive in. They hand us money to park their cars. It's great. It's a good deal. And we would go back at the end of this. So then, lunch shift would wrap up 3:30, 3:45 p.m. We'd get back. We'd take the ferry back. So now we're getting on the ferry at 3:45. We walk in, we take some dollars, we buy a couple of beers, and we would sit on a table in the ferry, and we'd just start emptying our pockets of just cash, just wads of cash, right? It's the two of us, and we're just counting money. And who would think that for people walking by looking at us in the ferry, it's I don't know what's going on there. It does look a little shady. It kind of was. And so we would just pull out all the money, and we'd just count it and split it 50-50, boom, all right, cheers, see you tomorrow. So the thing is that the reason the lunch shift was so lucrative was because of the white zone that Boulevard had. Boulevard had a very luxuriously large white zone. And as the movie Airplane might have taught some of us, the white zone is for loading and unloading only. That's right. But so the way we ran the lunch shift, in order to pull it off with just two people, because really we should have had three, but having three would mean we're splitting the money three ways. I'm not doing that. So people would drive in at 11 a.m.-ish, they come in to have lunch at Boulevard. We would take the car and we would just nose it right in at the end of the white zone down there. And then we'd take the next car and we'd nose that one, and we would like as close as we possibly could, barely open the door for ourselves to climb out of the car to get out and just stack those cars in that white zone. Just stack them up. And it worked out fine. There were no really big deals. There was a period each day, let's say from noon to 12:30, where it got pretty crowded, right? Because people who came in at 11 were still there. People who came in at noon were arriving. And so that did create a scenario where people were double parking on the street. We're meeting them out on the street, they're climbing out on the street, and we're handing them a ticket and letting them in on the restaurant, which exactly defeats the purpose of the white zone, right? Which is to allow people to open the doors and get out without being out in the street. But this only lasted for maybe, like I said, 30 minutes, right in the middle of it was a little rough right there. But one day, we're in the middle of this, we're right at that time of day. And we're hustling, we're going back and forth, and I turn around, and there on the sidewalk is an SFPD officer. And it's you took one look at this guy, this is no beat cop. I'm in my 20s at this time, right? This guy's my age. And I don't know how rank works in the SFPD exactly, but in military terms, this guy had a lot of stars and bars. He's got shiny stuff all over here and a big jacket, and he's pissed. And I turn around, I literally turn around on the sidewalk, and he has just appeared out of nowhere. And he is commanding, presence. So I stop in my tracks. And he looks at me and he says, "Can you give me a reason why all these cars are parked in this white zone?" This is not a good situation. So I'm going to step back from the timeline. I'm going to expand. I'm going to slow motion the timeline here a little bit because I heard his question, and I mean, I'm looking at what he's looking at. And it's a white zone fully stacked with parked cars and nobody there. And it's our fault, right? Like, this is exactly, we're the reason why this is happening. And when I think back on it, like, I mean, for me, I definitely went to Catholic school from 4th grade to 12th grade. And maybe it's like this for everyone, but I know that my experience in Catholic school involved dealing with authority a lot, right? Teachers, principals, priests, nuns, everybody, anytime had a reason. Some purported that they had a reason from the highest possible authority that you need to do things in a certain way, right? Like but I think in the takeaway that I learned during that process was, you know, it matters a lot whether they know whether you did the thing or did the thing in the way that they asked you to do it. It matters a lot. And that in the end, I think what I learned, what I practiced many, many times in Catholic school was plausible deniability. That's basically what you learn. It's like, okay, they said I should do the thing this way, and that was stupid, so I'm not doing it that way. I just did it the way. Now, is there any possible way that they know whether I did it their way or my way? No, they don't know. You know what? I'm sticking with my story. I'm good. And it works. But the worst situation is when they know. I mean, when they know it's a bad situation. When they know and you try to say that it's not like that, that is when the authority structure goes like this and everything gets really bad for you. So to step back into the timeline of Mr. SFPD looking at me and saying, "Can you give me a reason why all these cars are parked in this white zone?" I took a beat. I said, "Not a very good one." And he went, "Huh." I mean, he was seriously, like, his finger was out, he was coming forward at me. And then there was the moment where he actually heard the words that I said. And he literally, like, stood back down. And he looked at me. He said, "I appreciate your honesty." And I said something along the lines of, "It seemed like the right thing to do." And then the mask came fully off. He just relaxed. His eyes, everything changed. Like, his whole face just changed. And he's like, "You know, as a cop," and he's like, he was 50 years old then, I'm 20 something, right? He's like, "As a cop, all I ever want is for people to just tell me the truth." And they never, ever tell me the truth. Like, yeah, I get it. Like, I'm sure that's what it's like. So he says, all right. I'm gonna give you 15 minutes. I'm gonna take a walk around the block. I'm gonna give you 15 minutes to get all these cars out of this white zone. Yes, sir. So he walks away. Sterling comes over. He's like, "What just happened?" I'm like, "Well, we need to take all these cars to the garage." And I mean, this is a major pain point for us. We've got cars coming in still, and of course, like, the people that came in at 11 a.m. whose cars we parked right there, they're just about to come out. It's all about to work out, but we gotta start driving cars to the garage. So we start driving cars to the garage, which means at certain times there's neither of us are there. So people come out, they're wandering around. They're like, "Where's our car? Where's the valet? What's going on?" Like, the restaurant actually got complaints, and one of the managers from the restaurant came out and they're like, "What is going on? We never get complaints from you guys." And we were like, "SFPD's being a hard ass." But it was a very, very rough afternoon. Obviously, we pulled it off, whatever, it was a low point, it was a lot of work. And then the thing is, like, when Sterling and I wrapped up at the end of the day, we're like, "Did the guy ever come back? Did you ever see him?" And it's like, you know what? If you were going to put in the effort to say that these rules are important, like, no, you got to show up. I think he was on his way to meet someone for lunch, gave us a heaping pile of crap, and then never came back. So, in the end, when he didn't come back, when he didn't show up to enforce the rules that he said were so important, the next day, we were parking cars on that white zone, and Boulevard Restaurant is still open right now. See?
He didn't close the restaurant. Nicely done. Well, everybody, that is it. We have come to the end of fly number 13. I want to thank you all for coming here tonight. I want to thank all the wonderful storytellers we have. Please, a big round of applause for all the storytellers. Thank you all. And before storytellers go, we're going to take a picture. This is our new tradition I started last time. We're going to take a picture of all the storytellers. But thank you all again. We're going to do this again on July 25th. We're going to be here, obviously, I've just been told. So please come back. The theme is Yikes. And thank you, everybody. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody. Good night.